Welcome to the Sharp Mind Show, episode 11. I'm Nate with FitfutureMD, your host. Make sure you shop at intercell.com. Pick you up a cool inspirational t-shirt today. Use code FitfutureMD for 20% off. And let's get started. So, today is 9/11, right? So we're going to start off by remembering 9/11. And the biggest thing, everybody kind of remembers where they were sitting at in 9/11. I had just started high school. I was in the 9th grade. We were actually in a history class, and they bring in a TV and turn on the TV and show that the towers had been hit, right? Me being in 9th grade didn't really know, what all that meant or what all that was going to end up being, right? But I remember how united the United States got at that time, right? So united that the Senate voted 98-0, and then 2 senators didn't vote, obviously, to go to war to get the people that, that were responsible for the terrorist attack, right, on 9/11. But on 9/11, we're just here to remember the people that died that day. We're here to remember the firefighters that ran into that burning building that died that day, the police officers, and then, when these towers came down, all the people affected by the inhalation of the building materials and that kind of thing, the long-term side effects of that kind of stuff. Also to the families that lost all their loved ones, because I'm from North Carolina, so then one of the planes came from Charlotte, North Carolina. So, their families actually here in Charlotte, that actually were affected by this, right? So, and then and then remembering what all came after, right? Like all the people that we lost fighting against terrorism, right? Fighting so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen to other people, doesn't happen to other countries, doesn't happen again on U.S. soil. You also think about some of the rights and stuff you gave up to keep the safety. That debate kind of ended at that time. But this is just here to remember 9/11. Remember everybody that we lost that day, and how united the United States was at that time, right? So the second thing we're going to talk about today goes completely opposite of that, right? So Charlie Kirk was assassinated yesterday, right? So far, no killer has been found. 2 people were initially detained, but they have been released, basically finding no evidence that they were the ones that did it. And basically I wasn't a Charlie Kirk fan. I didn't, watch his stuff. But you talk about, when someone's life is cut short, you talk about the impact of their life, right? And what this person believed in. He believed in debate, and he believed in free speech, political debate, and those are all big ideas, right? They're ideas that didn't exist before, or didn't exist in actuality until the United States existed, right? You didn't have the ability to debate with each other. You were under a monarch, right? You were under a king. and you didn't talk against the king. You didn't talk. The king made a decision, and that was the final decision. So the king made a decision to tax you. You had no other choice but to pay it, right? That kind of thing. And so you think about the impact in the life of this kind of person, like, that stands up for those kind of beliefs, right? The beliefs that are different, that make America what they are, and the ability to articulate your points, right? That's what you think about when you think about Charlie Kirk, right? Like I say, I wasn't a huge fan of Charlie Kirk. I didn't watch most of his stuff because I don't really watch political theater like that, but I would say he definitely had an impact on people's lives. And the reason I say that is because it went all the way up to the president, right? The president literally, talked about this situation yesterday, right? And I say we are praying for Charlie's family. I say he's got 2 children and a wife he leaves behind, and rest in peace, Charlie. Now, we'll talk about another issue. Is this kind of, if this was a political assassination, right? Or if this, are we really this divided that we have to start killing each other over political debate, over thinking about ideas with each other and trying to figure out which way that is the best way to go for the country, right? Like, are we really that divided that we have to start killing each other, right? If this was political, we haven't found the killer and they haven't proven that it was political, but that's basically what the gist is of it on the internet, is that it's a political assassination. But that begs the question, like, are we really that divided, right? Because I don't think we are, right? I think that most people are okay with capitalism with a social safety net, which is what we have now, right? Some people may believe that the social safety net should be higher. Some believe the social safety net should be lower, right? But we have a social safety net. Can we make those social safety net programs better? Absolutely we can, right? And we should be trying to make these things better, trying to make them more efficient. I'll just give an example of the DMV, right? Like, you shouldn't have to wait 8 hours at a DMV to get a driver's license, right? You shouldn't have to, grandma's going to get her Social Security, she retired and going to get her Social Security. She shouldn't have to be, at the Social Security office 8 hours waiting, right? Like, that kind of thing. So, so on 9/11, the day after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I would like to call for what I would call, us not being divisive enough to kill each other. Like, we can always and have always been able to find common ground, since the Civil War, right? Like, there's literally, like I say, we're the richest country in the world. Obviously, inflation is very high right now. People are struggling right now because of inflation. Price of housing is through the roof. Hopefully, the interest rates will start coming down, and the price of housing will start coming down. And if you get that coming down together, you'll start making housing more affordable again. That kind of stuff. And hopefully we can get, treaties throughout the world that are a little bit better than what they were before. But I really feel like you have to have some kind of political hope, like some kind, we really can't be this angry with each other, right? It can't be a hard stop. You know, there's certain things that are a hard stop, you know, that makes sense. But everything can't be a hard stop. There's got to be a compromise almost on every issue, right? Like, so, like I said, you know, rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. Praying for his family, and hopefully we can come, you know, it's 9/11. We were so united on 9/11. Hopefully it doesn't have to come to something that bad to get us united again, right? So, all right. So this episode is brought to you by London and the Googly Goo. London and the Googly Goo is my wife's book. It's a children's book, and it has a great moral. And if you have nieces, nephews, or children of your own, consider picking that book up for them. It's available hard copy on Amazon. It's also available digitally down below in the description. But it's called London and the Googly Goo. All right, so today we're going to go with the quote of the day. Next we're going to go with the quote of the day. And that quote is, be that person that you needed when you were younger. Be that person that you were needed when you were younger. And the biggest thing is, like, when you think about this quote, you think about, well, what did I actually need back then, right? You know, some people, you know, come from a long line of success, right? Some people come from a long line of failures, right? Some people, you know, come from all they knew was farming, or all they knew was being a mechanic, or, you know, all they knew how to do was work with their hands, right? Well, in 1971, the game changed, right? It changed from you save money to you invest money, right? And it changed because we went off the gold standard and the money printing machine started, right? So they started devaluing our dollar, right? So I think that's really like the biggest thing I wish I had understood back in 2003, 4, 5, you know, is that, you know, they basically changed the system where if you didn't invest, you weren't going to be successful, right? And then even then, you know, I didn't start investing until 2020, right? So you're talking about 15, 16 years, you know, even if I just knew it after college, 2010, okay, we need to start investing, you know, how much better would our life have been monetary wise, right? But what they say is, you know, the best time to invest was 20 years ago. The second best time to invest is right now, right? So if you haven't started investing, you know, I encourage you to learn about it and to start investing, right? I talk to people at work every day, you know, and the last thing on their mind is investing. They'll say, I don't have the money, you know, because they're already getting a pension, like, you know, that kind of thing. But to me, the way the world is going, there's no guarantees of pensions, right? They might be taking the money and they might be, you know, matching it and investing it for you, but there's just no, to me, there's no real, you know, there's no real guarantee that that money's actually going to be there. And even if it's there, is the money even going to be worth anything, right? Because, like I say, they're devaluing our dollar. They've been devaluing our dollar for a long, long time. You know, so if you retire right now on 80% of your salary, you know, and the average salary being $60K, you know, you're not looking too good if inflation keeps going like it's been going high, right? So, but the only way But anyway, what did I need back then? I needed someone that had that kind of guidance, right? That had that kind of knowledge. And honestly, at the time, I think somebody would have just had to knock me over the head for me to find it, right? I think all I really knew is I wanted to have a better life, right? I didn't want my mom to suffer, right, with arthritis. I definitely wanted to cure that as much as possible. Definitely didn't. I ended up graduating from college and really loving and missing the farmhouse that I grew up in. But, then I realized that area just wasn't what my heart wanted anymore, right? So, because my idea was always to go back to Johnson County, to go back and be a doctor in Johnson County. I just wanted to be a regular family physician, right? But knowing what I know now, I would have pushed myself more into business. I enjoy business better. That's what I needed back then. I needed somebody to show me that business was better, right? And to have an example of what that would look like, right? Because I only had the example of failure, right? I only had the example of businesses that didn't work, because 90% of businesses close in the first 5 years, right? They don't work. And, they don't work because of the money model. I'm not here to talk about that one, but I will say that what everybody needs when they're younger is a mentor. So basically you become the mentor that you needed back then, right? And so that's what I've done. I'm a life coach now, right? And I'm here to help you in the best way I can, right? It's $2,000 for the year. Most life coaches charge $150 an hour. You see them for 3 or 4 hours and you never see them again, right? But they only answer your phone call for another $150, right? So you can see if you did 52 weeks of that at $150, you'd be paying a lot more than $2,000, right? Number one. Number two, do 100% money back guarantee, right? So if I don't improve your life within that year, you get 100% money of your money back, right? So keep that in mind. I'm a life coach. Click that link in the description below, and check that out if you're interested, right? But that's one of the reasons I became a life coach, is I found this quote, and I'm going to be that person that you needed when you were younger, right now, right, and make your life better. So that's the quote of the day. Be the person that you needed when you were younger, and let's figure out what you needed back then, and let's make it happen right now, right? All right. So lastly, I'm going to talk about a little value investing, my favorite topic, right? So we got Ford, right? Ford is one of the most popular stocks in the S&P 500 because of its stock price, right? The last 52 weeks, it's been between $9 and $11.77. Right now, it's sitting at $11.42, so a little bit of the high side of that $11.77, right? But they got a trailing 12-month revenue of $185 billion and a net income of $3 billion. So what does that tell you about this company? This tells you that the company is spending a crap ton of money to make the revenue that it's making, right? So right now it's positive, right? So it's actually making money, 78 cents a share, but its gross margin is 7%, right? If you're operating a business, you want your business margins to be over 20%, right? So keep that in mind. That is the problem with Ford Motor Company, right? They are having to spend too much money to make the profit they have. So that means they're paying their workers too much money. Obviously, it's a union worker group, right, in Detroit. Obviously, then they have to compete, with other companies. They don't really have the technology that's better than the other companies, right? So that's really what makes Ford like a scarier value investment, right? But they do have a fat dividend, so you can get paid to hold it. And, you know, they are a strong American brand, right? So that's what kind of makes them a value investment, right? Is that, you know, they have these operational issues. And if the operational issues get fixed, then all of a sudden, instead of being worth $11, they're worth $26 again, right? So this is how I, you know, one of the ways that I doubled up before, right? Had a couple grand in Ford. You know, Ford went from, you know, $11, or I think it was all the way at $7. Went from $7 to $27, and of course I got out, right? So basically a triple up. And you know, this is one of the ways you value invest, right? So we're looking at the same thing, right? You see the same thing, and you know, you see it basically repeat in history, and you know, that's kind of how it goes, right? But if you look at, you know, it's so 75 cents a share is its dividend, right? A year, and it's PE. All right, so it's got a PE of 14. So obviously it's nice into the value investment side, and like I said, the biggest thing is that its gross margin is 7%, right? So, is Ford Motor Company a buy? Yes, it's a buy for me in my long-term investment portfolio, right? So, you know, I take what I make in my short-term and medium-term investments. I take half and I put them into my long-term investment portfolio, right? So, you know, I'm a little bit different than everybody else. You got to be different to do, you know, I took initial payment, right, and put it in the stock market, and I haven't put anything else in the stock market since, right? So that's what I've done. Now, most people tell you, like, no, you got to put like a certain amount in all the time. Well, not if you're making money off the money that you put in, right? You know, the idea is to make money. The idea is not to, you know, there is a preservation of wealth and there is a let's make money on this money, right? And it's a different strategy than one of the strategies is value investing, right? And so that's the long-term strategy is value investing. You know, the other one is growth stocks. You know, I was talking about that before. But this is the way you look at things, right? So, you know, obviously then you start comparing Ford to other companies, GM, Honda, Toyota, that kind of thing. And you say, well, where is it at in the market? How many cars are actually being sold? Is there disruption in this market? You know, or is it still the strong player in the market? Ford is still a strong player. They still have the number one truck in America. And they're going to continue to have the number one truck in America for a long, long time. It's whether that the other sections can compete, you know, can, you know, the Ford Fusion compete with the Honda Accord, you know, that kind of stuff, right? So this has been the Sharp Mind Show, episode 11, right? I'm Nate, the FitfutureMD, and I'm a life coach. If you're interested in life coaching, click the link below. Shop at InstaSell.com, pick out a cool inspirational t-shirt. Look for the Halloween drop coming out, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.